Hey everyone, and welcome to the November edition of 3030. I am Pat Reinhardt from Conductor. As always, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy day and spending it with me, ranting about the organic search industry. It's a quiet love of mine, as we all know. So, what are we going to be talking about today? One thing that everyone has been asking me over the last couple, since it was announced, is about the Page Experience update, and it's launching in May. So we've talked about that in the program before, but just going to kind of review that and talk about that. Big one that everyone is talking about is the possibility of Apple launching a search engine. So we'll get into that. We spoke about that very briefly last time. I had a very timely question at the end of the program last time, so I'll give my opinion on that. Also, we're going to talk a little bit more about Google's passage-based ranking, some clarity, some myths busted, and things of that nature over the last few weeks. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. We're going to be talking about Google getting sued again. This one probably has a little bit more teeth than previous ones, so they're going to go into that as well. And, of course, in my ongoing series of documenting Google, confirming very basic SEO, long-standing SEO things, we're going to talk about having an XML sitemap, and Google once again confirming that is something that you should do. Of course, you can probably understand that'll be a short slide. But anyway, let's get into it because I only have 30 minutes. Number one, the Page Experience Update is launching in May 2021. So Google has announced that the Experience Update will launch in about 6 months. So when you do that math, it's around May. So is there anything different that we've already talked about? Just to recap for anyone who may have not joined the program previously, the Experience Update is Google measuring what they are calling core web vitals. And what that is things such as page speed, security, interstitials, and a newer one called cumulative layout shift, which I probably can't call newer anymore, which basically means, like, does your site shift around oddly when buttons are pressed or when you scroll and things of that nature. You can use Lighthouse reports to measure this. You can use Page Speed Insights tool to measure this. Tools like DeepCrawl are actually now measuring this as standard fare. But for the most part, outside of anything that we have talked about or talked to on the program before, we have heard no other changes to what that's going to be about. But other than knowing what the definitive timeline is, the only update or thing that is not really changing, but just like something that we didn't talk about last time on the program, is that Google will also be testing visual indicators in the search results. So what are visual indicators? So things like that are the AMP insignia, the lightning bolt that they've tested on and off. If you look to the right, if anyone remembers the slow icons that used to show for when they first started rolling out page speed and being very in tune with page speed of the site. So we're probably going to see a lot of different things here, right? We're going to see a lot of different little things in the SERPs, being tested. So just expect that, right? Expect experimentation. Expect that you're going to see, different ways that people are interacting with the SERP. But take that. But for the most part, right now, the big news, quote unquote, here is that we now know when this thing is going to launch in May of 2021, which is pretty much 1 year from when they announced it. They announced this about 6 months ago. They're going to announce it again, which actually lines up with how they did Mobilegeddon back in the day. Like when you think about that, it comes down to they usually, like when something is a quote unquote big shift, they usually announce it a year in advance. That looks like that's a trend that is forming. Once again, I am not anticipating any major change here. Much like the Mobilegeddon back in 2016, I believe. That is something that Google just warned people about and said, hey, listen, make your site mobile friendly. This is pretty much the same thing. Hey, make sure your site is as fast as possible. Make sure you have a good experience, et cetera, et cetera. I am not anticipating any major shifts in ranking. I am not anticipating any major shifts in featured snippets or any different types of results that are coming out. I think that you'll see something. I'm sure there'll be a handful of sites out there and people will say that the Page Experience Update destroyed my business and it destroyed my site. But what probably actually destroyed their site is that it's a crappy site. So at the end of the day, just make sure your site is not a crappy site and you will be in good shape. I am not anticipating much change, like visible or massive change when this thing launches. But again, if you're worried about it, you think that your site has some weird stuff going on, go run Lighthouse reports, run PageSpeed Insights, go get deep crawl and run it through and see what your scores are across your whole site and see what you can do, to fix it. So that is what's going on there. Now, for the next one, I have fancier slides for the Apple conversation because my good friend Stefan and Gurdeep of Adapt out in the UK did a webinar together. For the most part, we had a really fun time talking about 2021 and beyond. And this section was authored, by Stefan, and we had a great discussion around it. So I am fully admitting that I stole these slides from Stefan. So if you go and listen to the We Localize, webinar that we did, that's where these came from. So I just want to be above board and completely honest about that. But again, it lends itself to the conversation, right? Why create slides again when I already have them? And the big question is Apple launching a search engine? All signs pointing to probably. It's interesting what we're seeing out there, right? When you think about what we know about this, right? Google itself pays billions of dollars to Apple, right, to be default search engine on Safari. We know that is a huge deal for them, right? In the UK, regulators are targeting Google for an antitrust, which we'll get to in the next section of the slide, and they do win quite often, right? Apple, when you think about it, has 600 plus jobs open for search-related engineers, anything from artificial intelligence to machine learning to natural language processing and things of that nature. The big thing that has a lot of SEO and search people talking is that Applebot has been busy crawling sites, a lot more than usual. If you check your log files, you will notice that Applebot is very, very active. Pretty much anyone I talk to says, I've really noticed. I've noticed that there has been an increase in Apple crawling my site. So that's also very interesting, right? You're crawling more, probably building an index for something. And then you can also see that the Apple mobile search experience is already bypassing Google results in Apple Spotlight, which is also another key indicator that maybe they're testing something out or planning to move away from Google or to change something, right? So that's interesting right there. Why would they do this? These are the big questions. Why on earth is Apple, largely an experience company, why would they want to build a standard search engine, right? Here, one big reason is, think about this. They would immediately become the second largest search engine since Safari is the most popular browser, right? And Chrome is number 2 on iPhones, right? When you think about the tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people who have an iPhone in their pocket, right? Think about that. If you switch the default browser to this Apple search engine, whatever it's called, you would immutely become a major player in the search space, and you would be bigger than Bing. So that is one thing. That's one reason to do it, and that opens up a whole new market of paid ads, things of that nature. That's crazy, right? It creates a very strong bond to iCloud, right? And that would allow them to make this engine very, very personalized. Now, that is one word that everyone should be thinking about here. What is Apple like? Apple loves personalization. It loves making you feel at home within their devices. So that could be another reason that they're doing it, right? They could be, since they are so focused on privacy, they could really be a privacy-focused search engine, right? That is in the DNA of that company. As we all know, DuckDuckGo is, marquees themselves as, the private search, the privacy search engine. But really, if Apple launched, that would be a big thing. That would definitely be a big part of this as well. And then also Siri and Apple HomePod, get to go after, Google Home and Alexa products more directly, right? Because then they have a search engine. They're not relying on other people's technologies to have their product become valuable to the consumer, which again I could see being very important to them. So, what do you do here, right? So those are the reasons. So there's the reasons of why Apple might do this, right? And I'll get into a couple of ideas what I think could be happening, some conversations I have, and then a little bit more of a futuristic, idea. But let's say Apple launches a search engine. What do you do? I implore everybody to just wait on it, right? Watch what happens. See what the purpose of the search engine is, if it exists at all. And not make any rash decisions or, start moving things around in their digital, in their digital strategies to go against, what Apple is doing, right? So just make sure you're being patient, right? definitely, stay on top of your analytics, especially mobile traffic, right? And look what happens from iOS devices, enabled devices, but also look to see, like how much traffic your site gets from Safari in general. Because that could be something that would give you an idea of what type of impact this might have. For your site in particular, right? Like, let's say a lot of people just don't care, and they every Apple fan person, comes out and says like, yeah, I'm going to use Apple search engine. How big of an impact could that have to your site? And then you can act on it, right? One thing you can do right now is check to see how much Applebot is crawling your site. You can go back, get 2 or 3 months or however much you can get, of your log files, and then check for Applebot and see what it's doing. That's the way that a lot of folks are looking at it right now, is how much of it is crawling your site, and then form your own opinions, right? Another thing to do is you can read, and the links will be in the presentation as we send it out. Apple actually updated its web crawler support page, Applebot, with new information on how it ranks results. So again, a lot of steps moving in the direction of what could be a new search engine, right? But again, it kind of comes back to, why on earth would Apple want to just create a run-of-the-mill, search engine, right? And I think that's what a lot of folks are struggling with, and that's what before anyone jumps to conclusions, there are 2 ways that you could think about this, right? One of them, could it be about local? Right? So I was talking to my good friend Doug, who works at a tremendously awesome company called A Place for Mom, and he was talking about, what would really fit their brand is if Apple was looking to get, like hyper local data for things like reviews on your site, right? And what could they do with that, right? What type of search engine could they do for that? That would be an interesting play, because what you could do is you could have a gated way to compete with you that would have very, very hyper localized, but also very personalized results for everything that is in your world, right? Because when you think about it, their biggest device is the iPhone, right? So you have people walking around. So why would they care about people searching on desktop, to be frank? And at the end of the day, it could be that they want to create a gated way to have the most relevant local results that exist, right? And that would put them right up against, sites like Yelp, right? And that could be a business that kind of goes with their brand, that, hey, listen, Apple wants to tell you what the real deal is about this business. Apple wants to tell you what the real deal is about everything that's happening around in your local world, to personalize your world around you. And that's a little bit more on brand for them. And I could see it being something like that, like a very local focused search engine, which again would make sense. If they're crawling your site, they're crawling for reviews, they're crawling for locations, they're crawling for a lot of different things. And so that could be one way, and they could monetize that really easily, and they overnight would probably overtake Yelp. So I think that Yelp, and that's something that really resonated with me, and that's totally, Doug's idea, but it really did resonate with me. And I think that that's something that, to consider, right? It might have something to do just to make that, the local search engine that, hey, listen, if you want to find out about what's going on directly around you, use Apple's search engine. And they could, and then that could, that has a lot of different applications. They could link that into Apple Maps and things like that, give you suggestions, things of that nature, build that into tech, moving into the future. As we all know, everyone's heard me talk about, wearable tech in the future, how voice search could interact with the world around you, what screens could be. It could be your glasses, it could be a contact lens, it could be a watch, things of that nature. So keep that in mind, that Apple is an experience company, right? They really want to create a great personalized experience for the consumer. A kind of cut and dry, search engine, well, yes, it could equate to billions of dollars for them. So, of course, but I just don't, I have trouble kind of rectifying that with myself, that they are going to create a page with 10 blue links on it. I just don't see that as being what the ultimate purpose is, but maybe it's the first step. I don't know, but I like the local idea. That's a good one. The other one, think about this, is that what is the biggest screen in your home, right? The biggest screen in your home typically is your television. Now, Apple has talked about building a television for a very long time, right? And and I think that they don't like the experience of having an Apple TV, which is a separate little box in your home that is just sitting, on top or below your television, and it just adds to the clutter, right? as we all know, Apple has been historically minimalistic. And it would be interesting to see if they're crawling all this to make the iPhone the remote of your life, right? So think about this, right? So the biggest screen in your house is your television. You use your iPhone. You say, hey, hey Apple, I want to watch, Schitt's Creek or something like that, right? And then on your television is hooked directly into your phone. And that all these results come up, right? Like, what episode do you want to watch, right? Because they know what you're talking about. They know what you've already watched. They say, hey, listen, you've watched these 3 episodes. Here are 6 episodes you haven't watched. But to the left or right of that, you could serve ads. You could monetize that and say, hey, do you want to buy this season? And then, you could purchase that from Amazon Prime, and then they would get, a referral or, a commission off of that. And there's a lot of different ways that you could monetize something like that. And then also, since your phone is with you, all the other Apple products that you have in your home all of a sudden really start talking to one another, and then they start visualizing, things as you walk through your home. And that's an interesting thing and something that is very, very on brand for Apple, right? They want more Apple devices in your house. So why not start with the biggest screen, get you used to it, and then all of a sudden you're buying HomePods, and all of a sudden you have, some speaker system that they built, and you have computers, and everything talks to one another, and you have a hub, which is not necessarily like the Google Hub, or what it is, or the Nest Hub rather. What it is just your phone. Your phone becomes a hub to your home. And what phone is that? It's an iPhone, and that is very on brand for Apple. And that would be a very interesting way for them to use, search data and things of that nature to give you the results to whatever question you're asking or whatever problem you're trying to solve or whatever TV show you're trying to watch right in your palm of your hand, but allow you to control your entire life through your phone. And that's a very Apple thing that search data would lend itself to very, very well. And then what would they create? They would create an entirely new search experience. And that's what they do. They disrupt. They like to disrupt things, right? And that is something that you could think about how they could be using this. So, and all that would be powered by Apple Search. So it's something to think about. I'll move on from here because we're running down on time. But at the end of the day, if anyone else has any thoughts or wants to talk about this more, please hit me up. I'm always happy to talk about this stuff. So moving on. A little bit more discussion on Google's passage bag-based ranking, right? Ranking, not indexing, remember. So there's been a lot of conversation around this, that Google will now be able to rank content on a page based on a certain passage in it and not have to rank it based on all of the content that exists on the site. One thing to remember is that this is passage-based ranking, not indexing. You will see many, many, many people referring to it as passage-based indexing, but it has nothing to do with indexing. It's all about how it ranks content. It also still crawls and indexes the entire page. But the specific query that someone asks, if there's a passage within a page that is relevant to that query, then it will rank that query. It will just rank that passage of that page. It will not show the rest of it, and it'll look like basically like a featured snippet, or it'll link to the page that just has that passage. So if you look to the right on Glenn's tweet, you can see what it could look like, right? You see that little passage. It looks like an answer box for the most part, but that's what the difference is between that. It is also different than featured snippets. Featured snippets have been around for a very long time, completely different system, completely different way of making those pop up. This is different than featured snippets. It is not a new featured snippet. This is a way to rank certain content. And while a display is very similar to a featured snippet, it is not considered a featured snippet. It's just how they rank and display the content on that, right? This is not a core update. That's something to be very clear about. A lot of people think that this is like some huge algorithm update. It is not. This is just a way that they are, that they are looking at content and ranking it. But it is not an overhaul or crazy huge core change to how the algorithm works. And with that, building on that, remember that with any, with any modern, core update, you really can't optimize to this. So I'd love you all to buck the trend and just don't worry about optimizing, quote unquote, for for passage-based ranking. There's no way to optimize for it. It's just make sure that you have great content. I'm not going to go into that diatribe again, but at the end of the day, just remember that that's not what it's about. And the last thing is that expect experiments, right? So Glenn went out and he asked John Mueller from Google, like, what is this going to look like and all these things. And John basically came back and he said, Google will roll it out in one place, like in featured snippets. Again, it's not featured, but they could roll it out that looks like featured snippets. They'll experiment a bit. They'll see what its engagement is like. And then they roll it out more broadly, and then they'll have more data, and then they'll mess around with it. They'll turn the dial up, they'll turn the dial down, like they always do. But at the end of the day, just remember that Google is going to experiment with this just like any other thing that they roll out. So expect experiments, expect change, expect to see some wonky stuff over the next few months. But at the end of the day, still pretty cool. I like this whole concept. But I don't think that there's a way to optimize for it. But at the end of the day, it's really just making sure your site is optimized in general and has good content. So just think about, continue down that road, right? So next thing, Google is getting sued again, by the Department of Justice, right? And I want to read this, a statement by the Attorney General, that filed the lawsuit against Google. And it reads like this, 25 years ago, the Department of Justice sued Microsoft, paving the way for a new wave of innovative tech companies, including Google. The increased competition following the Microsoft case enabled Google to grow from a small startup to an internet behemoth. Unfortunately, once Google itself gained dominance, it resorted to the same anti-competitive playbook. If we let Google continue its anti-competitive ways, we will lose the next wave of innovators, and Americans may never get to benefit from the next Google. The time has come to restore competition to this vital industry. So that's an interesting take on it, right? And it makes you think. At the end of the day, what could this mean for search, right? And there's a lot of ideas, but my thoughts just reading through it, there's a link in the presentation to Search Engine Land. Greg Sterling, who really understands the legal aspect of it, wrote up a great download on it that y'all should read. But for the most part, this one is like the real deal. Google's been sued countless times, and they win some, they lose some. But this one is, feels like the Microsoft one from 25 years ago when, Microsoft got really dinged for this and they had to approach, the way that they approach search, right? With that said, I still don't think this is going to fundamentally change the way that search works. It's just how Google does business. And I don't know what that means for the company, but I think for the way that search works, like search in general works, I don't see them creating, like, I've heard, like, wild things, like, they're going to create they're going to make Google break up into vertical-based, search engines. I've heard that for 10 years, and I just don't see that happening. Why would we, as just users in general, want to have to go to several different places to search around for a couple of things? That sounds terrible. That sounds like a step backwards for the industry. So I don't see any fundamental things changing. But at the end of the day, I think that Google is going to get dinged here in some way. The next thing is that everyone has to remember that this is going to take absolutely forever. This is going to take years and years and years, for anything to come of it, and it's going to cost everyone a lot of money. And honestly, I think us as the general search public probably aren't going to feel a lot of change, and we're probably not going to notice a lot of change, even if Google loses this, and they have to change the way that they do some things. I don't think we're going to feel it on the organic side. Maybe you'd feel it a little bit more on the paid side. I don't know. I don't know why I think that, but maybe there could be some change to policies there and things of that nature. I don't know. It's big. But either way, I know that this is not going to be like something that we're going to hear any definitive answer on in 2021 or 2022 even. I think this is going to last for years. It's going to last for 5+ years probably. And they're just going to keep going back. There's going to be appeals. There's going to be decisions, and then decisions are going to be rescinded. And it's just going to go. And Google would probably be a completely different company by the time it gets to the end of this thing. And then again, I mentioned this before, but if you want a really, really good, read, it's long, but it's a really good read by someone who really understands the legal aspect of this. Greg Sterling, who's a tremendous journalist over at Search Engine Land. You can read his download. I implore you to go and read that if you want to really know a lot of the legal implications of this. So that's another thing to consider. And then the last thing, and of course, in my ongoing series of Google continuing to confirm longstanding SEO truth, John Mueller was asked about XML sitemaps and got himself in there into a conversation there. And for one thing, he had a really great response to someone who like a lot of people were complaining about the the indexing tool being down, or the URL indexing tool being down. And John just said, to this question, was like, seems like something to fix regardless. Making a sitemap file automatically seems like a minimal baseline for any serious site, in my opinion. John always has a little bit of shade in his voice when he's like, yeah, come on, man. But for the most part, everything he says is true, and it was glorious. It was a great comment. Love John's talks and just how blunt he is. But again, this comes back to like a very simple thing that a lot of people still struggle with, is just having an XML sitemap, and having it update automatically as your site updates. Most modern CMS systems do this for you, and I understand that a lot of folks are on homegrown systems and things of that nature. But for the most part, if you do not have if you not have an XML sitemap, John does not believe you are a serious website, which I find funny. But at the end of the day, very true, right? If you're taking care of your site, take care of the basics first, and then get into the more advanced stuff. A lot of people try to jump ahead and get into the advanced stuff before the basic stuff is taken care of, and that's something that and this is why I continue to do these basic truths of SEO from program to program, so that people can people understand that these things are very important. And I always say I understand that sometimes I don't recognize that some people are just getting into SEO, but if you are, then this is one of those basic things. Make sure you're maintaining those, but make sure that you have a good, you have a way that they automatically update. And with that, remember, we've talked about algorithms today. We talk about algorithms all the time, but let's not chase algorithms, right? Because the only algorithm that matters is the heart and mind of your customer and your user. And if you create great content that they're thinking about, they will go to your content and make them care about it. And at the end of the day, that's what we're all trying to do, right? Is create great content and help our users at the end of the day. And with that, thank you all so much. Don't really have time for questions today, unfortunately, just because we got right up to the end here. But everyone, I hope everyone has a safe and happy Thanksgiving. I know it's a little bit weird this year, but please stay safe. Stay in small groups. And let's get past this thing. And also, as I say every time, thank you all for taking 30 minutes out of your very busy schedules. I know how important your time is, and I appreciate you spend it with me. This is my favorite part of my job, and I would not be able to do it without you. Thank you so much. Very humbled. Everyone, enjoy the holiday, and we will see you next month.